The black race advancing towards an integrative restorative society. Hi, let's talk about it. It was the late, great Robert Nesta Marley that penned these words. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Is it possible? Yes, it can. We have the power. The black race is a community whose ancestors were physically enslaved. Over the period of the Atlantic slave trade from approximately 1526 to 1867, some 12.5 million slaves were shipped from Africa. The Atlantic slave trade was likely the costliest in human life of all long-distance global migrations. I am sure that at some point in your life and my life, well, I would have heard about it. All of us would have heard the story about slavery and how the slaves were treated. To understand the present, we often have to look at the past and ask the questions: what, when, how, where, and then, now what? Slavery traumatized my ancestors, and that trauma has caused many negative and aggressive behaviors to emerge, which has traveled through the generations, and those behaviors are still present today in black people. This transgenerational trauma produces a behavior that is very present in the lives of the black race towards each other. Our ancestors were chained and beaten. As a people, we are abusive and oppressed. Our ancestors were raped, and statistics would state that black people worldwide have the highest prevalence of having been forced to have sexual intercourse. Our ancestors never experienced the connections with each other that family life entailed. Statistics states that the black race has the highest single-parent families, and mostly without fathers present. Our ancestors never owned anything, not even their names, and that is still a big challenge today among my people. As a race, they still struggle to maintain certain rights, equalities, and freedoms which is afforded to other races without the struggle. The struggles that exist today are not only physical but emotional and economic. Our present day behaviors are now being defined as post-traumatic slave syndrome, which explains the effects of the unresolved trauma on the behaviors of blacks that is transmitted from generation to generation. I have been a victim, yes, of the post-traumatic slave syndrome. I have been raped. I have been beaten under the disguise of discipline, and I know many black men and women who would have had similar experiences. My career path has allowed me to come in contact with many of the behaviors I speak about. I have over 15 years experience as a teacher. I have performed duties of a youth development officer, managed a residential juvenile facility, and now I am currently employed as a senior probation officer. Based on my own experiences and what I would have seen led me to do more research into the post-traumatic slave syndrome, because it is a condition that exists as a consequence of multi-generational oppression of Africans and their descendants resulting from centuries of chattel slavery. Is this really having an effect on the black race today? The simple answer is yes. There are some predictable patterns of behavior that tend to occur. Some I've already mentioned, but it's necessary for me to mention a few more so that you can truly understand. Black people struggle with feelings of hopelessness, depression, and a general self-destructive outlook. A strong urge to identify with oppressors because people of color bleach their skin and their hair because of low self-esteem and not really knowing their true identity. They commit violence against self, property, and others, including the members of one's own group, example, friends and relatives. It's time to bring an end to the hurt we have caused ourselves and each other. Healing for restoration from trauma of slavery is necessary because slavery has left an indelible effect on the black race. The lenses through which we currently look through need to change for growth, development, and a paradigm culture shift to take place. You might ask, how is this possible? My studies led me to restorative practices. Restorative practices is a social science that studies how to build social capital and achieve social discipline through participatory learning and decision making. The use of restorative practices helps to improve and repair relationships between people and communities. The purpose is to build healthy communities, decrease crime and antisocial behavior, repair harm, strengthen civil society, and restore relationships. Restorative practices can be the catalyst used to heal, restore, and unite the Black race, which will then lead to the integrative restorative society that I speak about. IIRP, a graduate school in Philadelphia, focuses on restorative practices. A graduate of IIRP said, "People want to believe they can change the world. At IIRP, they learn how to change behaviors, how to build relationships, and how to empower communities. It is my firm belief that the restorative practices has programs that can be used with all age groups to achieve that cultural change we speak about. It will never happen overnight, not even in a year or two, but with some consistency, which is also a core word used in restorative practices, it can happen, which will result in gradual changes being seen over a period of time. Change begins with one. One of the courses taught at IIRP is Transforming Relational Harm, which explores deep application of restorative practices as it relates to emotion and harm. Then there are circles. The circle process has the influence to address and attend to some of the most rudimentary human desires. Circles can be used to address any situation. You can also visit the IIRP website to learn more. One of the things that really stood out for me in my studies with restorative practices is the impact that generations have on each other. This became real with the Circle of Courage, divided into 4 quadrants: belonging, mastery, independence, and generosity. They together can create opportunities for responsibility, developing positive youth, and teach pro-social values and behaviors. Remember, behaviors are learnt. Children learn what they live. If we want to reach the present and next generation, our behaviors must change. As individuals, we have always learned that our perspectives are formed based on what we are exposed to in our homes, schools, church, and community. But there is a hope beyond the horizon that says all is not lost. As a race, we can shake off the shackles. No longer do we have to drag around the hurt and the pain that has enslaved us mentally. New studies in epigenetics is revealing much more in reference to our behavior and shows that this is possible. Epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work. Unlike genetic changes, epigenetic changes are reversible and do not change your DNA sequence, but they can change how your body reads a DNA sequence. You see, environment can trigger negative epigenetic changes, but new experiences can reverse them. Nurture has won in this case of nature versus nurture. The gene expression that exists in us can change through love or abuse, serenity or stress, positive thoughts or pessimistic fears, and healthy or unhealthy diets. If we change our negative behaviors to positive behaviors using programs like restorative practices and what they offer, without a doubt, we will begin to see the changes. Human development is a lifelong process of physical, behavioral, cognitive, and emotional growth and change. Progression and advancement of a culture, of a race, of people is possible. It may take many years. Nevertheless, if the new life-changing lessons that RP offers are learned, accepted, and adapted, then eventually there will be a paradigm shift of a people, a restorative, integrated society.